First of all, welcome to everybody and thank you for coming. My name is Tom Fulton. I'm the president of the Family Housing Fund. The Family Housing Fund is a nonprofit and one of 17 members of an entity known as the Minnesota Foreclosure Partners Council. Now, just a little bit of a story here in the way of background. When the mortgage foreclosure crisis, the trauma, the national, local trauma, the trauma for families first arrived more fully in our community consciousness, all the major organizations that would have key responsibilities in helping this state deal with the consequences of that foreclosure crisis got together and formed this Partners Council. This was unique in the country. 17 institutional members who made an early vow to work together, knowing that we couldn't stop the crisis, but we could manage it and mitigate its impact on Minnesota. So that group has been meeting regularly for years, and they created a coordinated plan. This is it. It's in your purple packet. And if you want to know the individual members of the council and the affiliate members, it's all listed on this. The Foreclosure Partners Council very early on identified 3 key goals. And Mary, if I could ask you to, let's bring this up. Obviously, they said, well, the best way to deal with foreclosure is to prevent it. So there was a goal of preventing 27,500 foreclosures. But some foreclosures just can't be prevented. So there was a goal to acquire, hold, or rehabilitate 3,500 foreclosed properties and then arrange financing or financial assistance for 2,850 new mortgages to assist families. And this chart, which is also included in your purple packet, tells you the progress that we've made so far. And we're here today really to report to the community on that progress, to thank everybody who made this all possible, but not to rest on our laurels because the foreclosure crisis and its consequences is still with us. So we're here today to positively reinforce the efforts of our Minnesota community to deal with this and inspire ourselves to continue to give our best effort so that Minnesota remains the best place in the country in terms of responding to this terrible problem.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I want to welcome you to the beautiful Frogtown neighborhood in St. Paul.
Absolutely.
I want to welcome you on behalf of Mayor Chris Coleman, who is actually out of the country selling the Twin Cities and selling regional development in particular. I actually just this morning on the way to work was listening to public radio, and if you heard the story they did on foreclosures, there was a figure, I think, that the recent numbers suggest that 38% of all second mortgages that were taken out in the last stretch here are actually underwater, and that we're still in the midst of this continued foreclosure crisis. The impact that has on communities obviously is significant. It has a big impact in neighborhoods like this, in Frogtown on the east side, 2 of our neighborhoods where we have some of the highest foreclosure rates. And you see these are neighborhoods where we've been working actually for many, many years to try and turn the neighborhoods around. And that foreclosure crisis hit right at a time when I think we were just starting to make progress. So the significance of the Foreclosure Partners Council in kind of re-energizing the effort to address that problem has been significant. And to get to this point where we can talk about 25,000 homes having been or having prevented foreclosure in 25,000 households is really significant. And it's significant in this neighborhood. This neighborhood is part of our Promise Neighborhoods effort in St. Paul. It's right along the Central Corridor light rail line that's coming in. And so it's part of a larger set of tools. It's a very important tool in terms of our ability to stabilize housing and to really contribute to neighborhood revitalization and vitality. So it's incredibly important. I just want to say I think Tom's really outlined kind of the core strategies here. I think what we really appreciate is the partnership of all of the different entities, government, private sector, nonprofits, funders. That's really been significant to have all that come together, and in typical Minnesota fashion, we tend to do it better than just about everybody else, but we still have a lot of work ahead of us. So I want to really single out Cecile Bedore and the staff of our PED department in St. Paul for their leadership in that coalition effort and for their successful use of that tool here in St. Paul. It's been really significant. And I also want to give a shout out to Jim and the folks at Dayton's Bluff NHS for their work across the city. It really matters. And finally, most importantly, I want to say thank you to our homeowners, to the Vu family for your inspiration, actually, and the confidence that you've made as a market investment in this neighborhood really matters. And we hope that it will really catalyze other investment as well. So thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Thank you.
Greater Minnesota Housing Fund is a lead partner in foreclosure recovery throughout the 87 counties of Greater Minnesota. I would say I'm one of the state or the voices from around the state today. Mary Tingerthal, Commissioner of Minnesota Housing, will be up here in a few moments. But we do provide a lot of charitable funding and technical assistance to housing organizations throughout Greater Minnesota, and all of the organizations that we support are working on foreclosure recovery and neighborhood revitalization, as well as the production of other affordable housing, well-designed affordable housing. And I think one of the things I want to mention today is that it's important to report that Commissioner Tingerthal and I have just returned from meetings with 250 housing representatives from throughout all 6 regions of Greater Minnesota who were providing input to Minnesota Housing's plan, to our work at Greater Minnesota Housing Fund and so forth. And every single one of those regions reported that the foreclosure crisis is ongoing in their region, and it continues to be a priority in their communities throughout their regions. So this is a statewide crisis, as Tom said, and there are organizations throughout the state that are working on it. In the last few years, we've worked with about 20 cities who have mobilized with their nonprofit and for-profit and local government partners in sort of a microcosm of what's going on in the Twin Cities here to do foreclosure recovery, acquisition rehab, acquiring homes that were in foreclosure, getting them in shipshape, getting them in the hands of stable homeowners, and preventing further neighborhood decline. So this is, the response is also going on throughout the state, as well as the sort of pernicious nature of the crisis.
Without the Foreclosure Partners Council, we simply would not have the results that you see today. The first was really recognizing the problem early on. It was really in 2007, long before other communities around the country had started thinking about this, that the Foreclosure Partners Council organized. It also made a decision in that same year to build the capacity of the Homeownership Center to be able to handle what they knew from looking at the numbers early on would be an absolute flood of homeowners that needed assistance to stay in their homes, or if that wasn't possible, to be able to mitigate the damage that would be done by their departures. There is still not today in any other state in the union anything equating the Homeownership Center for its coverage and for its ability to deliver foreclosure prevention resources to people throughout the state.
I'm Ed Nelson, work with the Minnesota Homeownership Center. We are the independent 501c3 organization that oversees the statewide housing counseling organizations in Minnesota, pre-purchase education and counseling, and importantly, foreclosure prevention counseling as well. And I think what you've heard from all of the speakers here today, and with the entire concept of the Partners Council that exists in Minnesota, it is unique. We are the only state in the country that has this coordinated effort with nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, the lending institutions, public municipalities, everyone involved in, whenever possible, like Mary said, preventing those foreclosures that can be prevented, as well as recovering, helping communities recover if a foreclosure is inevitable. I work with colleagues throughout the country all the time and ask us flat out, how can we replicate what you're doing in Minnesota? And I always laugh. Doing it in the middle of the crisis, it's too late. Minnesota was ready prior to that happening because of the efforts of these kinds of organizations. And the Partners Council is one key piece, key component of that unique relationship we have here in Minnesota. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak, and congratulations to the Partners Council for just a great success.
My name is Melvin Carter, and I am just really pleased to be here. In a number of senses, I'm pleased to be here at the 25,000 mark, 25,000 foreclosures prevented. You know, you could look at that number and think that means 25,000 families, but I got to tell you, that's so much further beyond that point. You know, for every foreclosure that's prevented, you know, we're talking about not just that family who stays in their home, but we're talking about the neighbors who, instead of having to shovel the snow next door, instead of having to pull the weeds and mow the lawn and sometimes even garden next door, they get to keep their neighbors. We're talking about, you know, a whole community of impacts that I think we've learned more and more about as we've seen the foreclosure crisis grow and really take over some of our neighborhoods. I'm proud to be here in the sense that we're in Frogtown, which is a neighborhood that I represent on the city council. It's a neighborhood that I live in. I'm very proud to be here at this place, at this home today, to meet my new neighbors, Carrie and Sue. I actually walked over here this morning from my home, which I'd have to exaggerate to say I live a half a block from here. You know, so I walked over here to meet my new neighbors, and I've got to tell you, if you need any brown sugar ever, we're good for it. You know, when my family first moved into Frogtown, there was a house next door to my house that was in really bad repair. It had been abandoned, and it was just in really bad repair. And I was driving through the alley and driving home one day, and my daughter, who was 2 or 3 at the time, looked at me and said, "Daddy, why is that house broken?" You know, and it was one of these things, you know, sometimes our children can sort of call a consciousness out of us. You know, it was one of those things that just didn't sit right with me. You know, for the majority of the last 4 years, I've shared this with a number of people, you know, of the properties, you know, next door to my house. I lived between 2 vacant properties, and across the street, looking at 3 of 4 properties across the street being vacant. And our families really felt directly what the impact of vacant homes in a community can do. This property is a perfect example too of, unfortunately, after some of those homes that can't be prevented, you know, what do we do from there? And every property that we rehab, and you know, it's not just, you know, my new neighbors who are coming into this property, but there's workers who get a chance to, you know, swing a hammer on here. There are business owners who are struggling in an economy who get a chance to bid on the property. You know, again, there are neighbors who get their neighbors back. The impacts of this just go on and on and on. The math is good, as we heard earlier. You can't beat the math, but this is so the right thing to do. So thank you to all of our partners. Thank you to everybody who's been engaged. Thank you to everybody who will continue to stay engaged. We know that we're not at the bottom yet. There are certainly a number of foreclosures that remain out there to be prevented. So as we look at ourselves at 92% of our goal and on our way towards our goal of 27,500 foreclosures prevented, it makes me think we need to set some more goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your hospitality and allowing us to use your home and see your home. You can tour the home afterwards, and there are refreshments, and it's cool inside. So thank you so much.